Cinder. The Lunar Chronicles #1 by Marissa Meyer. The mechanic's expertise. The mechanic's expertise. Cinder's day commenced in the usual corner of the market plaza, surrounded by the detritus of a world too reliant on machinery. She meticulously arranged the parts on her table, her hands moving with practiced ease as she cleaned a complex dock connector. The metal felt cool and familiar, a stark contrast to the warmth that would soon enter her stall. As the morning gave way to afternoon, Cinder's focus never wavered from her task. The market's cacophony became a distant hum, secondary to the symphony of metal and wire she conducted. It was during these hours of deep concentration that she felt most at peace, most herself. Interlude, a brief respite, and then the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the plaza. Cinder leaned back, stretching muscles stiff from hours of meticulous work. The android lay open before her, its innards a testament to her skill. She wiped her brow, leaving a streak of grease that went unnoticed. It was then that a familiar figure reappeared, heralding the end of her solitude. Prince Kai stood at the threshold of her workshop, the same android now cradled in his arms. His unexpected presence was like a pebble dropped into the still waters of Cinder's routine, causing ripples that disturbed her calm. "Is this a bad time?" he asked, a hint of mirth in his voice. Cinder turned, her heart stuttering in her chest. "Your Highness, I didn't see you there." The prince's eyes roamed over the android, taking in the transformation wrought by Cinder's hands. "I see the rumors are true. You are the best mechanic in New Beijing." A flush of pride warmed Cinder's cheeks, battling with the cool smudge of dirt that marked her skin. "I just fix what's broken," she said, her voice a mix of humility and confidence. Their conversation flowed as easily as the work had, with Kai expressing his awe and Cinder sharing her philosophy on repair. Outside, the city continued its weary battle against the plague, the fear it inspired hanging like a shroud over the populace. "You're not just fixing machines, are you?" Kai mused, watching her hands move with assured grace. "You're keeping hope alive." Cinder paused, his words striking a chord within her. "Maybe," she allowed herself to admit, "but right now I'm just trying to save my sister." The prince's expression softened with empathy. "I heard about Peony. I'm sorry." Cinder turned away, the threat of tears a weakness she refused to show. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the workshop's gentle hum. In the soft glow of the workshop's lamp, they stood together, prince and mechanic, united by the struggle of a city and the flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. Cinder's hands, steady and sure, attached a new limb to the android. "There," she said, a quiet triumph in her tone. "It should work now." Kai watched, his face alight with wonder as the android's eyes flickered to life. "Incredible," he breathed out, his smile genuine and wide. Cinder allowed herself a small smile in return, despite the weight on her heart. "It's what I do," she responded, her voice steady. With a nod of appreciation, the prince departed, the repaired android a symbol of their encounter. Cinder was left with a mix of emotions, pride at her accomplishment, sorrow for her sister's plight, and a renewed sense of purpose. She wouldn't let her stepmother, or anyone, deter her from her path. With a renewed determination, she faced her workbench, ready for the next challenge. Her expertise as a mechanic was more than a livelihood. It was her rebellion, her hope, and perhaps her destiny. The city's struggle against the plague, the fear it wrought, and the hope she fostered were all intertwined in the delicate dance of gears and circuits that the stepmother's disdain. Cinder's heart was a battlefield of emotions as she stood in the dim light of her workshop, the scent of metal and oil a sharp contrast to the softness of her sister's sick room. The weight of Peony's illness pressed heavily upon her, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. She could feel Audray's eyes on her, the disdain palpable in the air. Yet it was the indifference towards Peony's suffering that stung the most. Audrey's voice was sharp, her posture rigid with the strain of unspoken fears. "You think you can save her with your little experiments?" she challenged, her hands clenched at her sides, betraying her usual composure. "What do you know of cures and medicine?" Cinder's resolve did not waver. "More than you might think," she replied, her voice steady. The antidote had come into her possession through a chance encounter with an old apothecary who had once served the royal court. He had seen the desperation in her eyes, and taking pity on her, had handed her a vial of the stolen elixir, whispering of its rumored powers to cure even the most virulent strains of the plague. In the corner of the room, unnoticed until now, stood Mr. Tanaka, a loyal customer whose presence had become a comforting constant in the workshop. His eyes were filled with a quiet understanding as he observed the exchange between stepmother and stepdaughter. Cinder had confided in him once about her struggles with Adri, and he now witnessed the tension between them, a silent observer to the complexities of their relationship. "You waste your time with these machines," Audrey continued, her voice laced with scorn. "Your place is in the home, tending to your sister, not playing mechanic." Cinder's jaw clenched, her gaze flicking to the half-disassembled android on the workbench. "These machines are what keep us fed and sheltered," she retorted. "And I will not give up on Peony. I refuse to accept that there is no hope." Audrey's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Cinder saw a flicker of vulnerability beneath the harsh exterior. "Hope is a luxury we cannot afford," Audrey said, her voice thick with unspoken grief. "Sometimes the best we can do is accept the hand we've been dealt." Cinder's eyes stung with unshed tears, but her determination burned brighter. "I won't accept it," she whispered. "Not for Peony." She knew the royal ball was taking place that evening, an extravagant affair that seemed to mock her current predicament. While the city buzzed with excitement, she was trapped in a workshop, fighting for her sister's life. As Audrey turned to leave, her shoulders slumped. Cinder felt a surge of conflicting emotions. She wanted to hate her stepmother, but instead she saw a woman weighed down by her own fears and losses. It was in that moment that Cinder understood Audrey's disdain came from a place of hurt and insecurity. With a heavy heart, Cinder approached Mr. Tanaka, seeking solace in the presence of the kind customer. "I can't leave Peony's side, but I must attend the ball," she confided. "I fear it may be my only chance to find a cure." Mr. Tanaka's eyes widened, and he placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You must go then," he urged. "I will stay here and watch over Peony. Consider it my contribution to your cause." Cinder's eyes filled with grateful tears as she nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. She knew the odds were stacked against her, but with the antidote in her possession and the unwavering support of those, like Mr. Tanaka, she felt a glimmer of hope. Stepping out of the workshop, Cinder took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges that awaited her. The night sky stretched above her, a canvas of infinite possibilities. With the weight of her sister's life on her shoulders, she set forth, determined to face whatever destiny had in store. The doctor's discovery. Cinder's heart raced with a mix of fear and anticipation as she stepped into the lab. Dr. Erland, already at work among his vials and instruments, looked up with a knowing glance. "We're close to a breakthrough," he said, his voice steady. Cinder, her metallic fingers cool to the touch, took a seat. "What have you found?" she asked, her thoughts on Peony and the hope of a cure. Dr. Erland adjusted his glasses, a hint of a smile on his face. "It's not about a cure, Cinder. It's about you. Your past and the future you hold." He had always known more than he let on, his cryptic hints now making sense in the light of her questions. As he prepared a simple test, Cinder's mind wandered to Prince Kai, his genuine kindness, and their shared moments. Would he see her the same when he learned of her true nature? The test was quick, a mere formality. Dr. Erland's eyes lit up as he read the results. You are the key, Cinder. Not just a survivor of Letimosis, but a lunar of unique status, a shell. The revelation hit her like a wave. She was a lunar immune to the manipulations of Queen Levana. Dr. Erland leaned forward, his voice low. There's an implant in your neck, a safeguard against Levana's influence. Your father placed it there to protect you. Cinder touched her neck, feeling the outline of the device that had been her silent guardian. He knew I was different? Yes, he knew you were destined for greater things. You are Princess Selene, the lost heir to the lunar throne. The room spun as Cinder grappled with her identity. She was the missing princess, the hope for a different future. The cyborg's choice. Cinder wiped the grease from her hands as she stepped back to admire the old car she had been working on. It was a mess of wires and metal, but to her, it was a masterpiece in progress. The garage was quiet, save for the occasional clank of tools and the distant hum of New Beijing waking up. Are you going to the ball tonight? Peony's voice echoed from the doorway, her tone teasing. Cinder shook her head without looking up. I don't have time for dances and dresses, she replied, her voice firm. I have to fix this car. But everyone will be there, even Prince Kai. Peony pressed, stepping closer to the car, her eyes wide with excitement. Cinder sighed, turning to face Peony. I just spent all my money on a new foot. I can't afford a ticket, let alone a dress. Peony's face fell for a moment before she brightened up again. You could wear one of my dresses. It's not about the dress, Cinder said. This car is my chance to get out of here, to start a new life. I need to focus on what's important. Peony leaned against the car. Is it because of Adri? Are you trying to escape her? Cinder paused, considering her words. Adri is part of it, yes. But it's more than that. It's about finding who I am beyond these walls, beyond what she, or anyone else, thinks I should be. Pia nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. You're not just a mechanic, Cinder. You're something more. Cinder smiled faintly, her resolve hardening. I have to be. For you, for myself. There's a world out there that doesn't revolve around balls and dresses, and I intend to find it. Cinder turned back to her work, the car's engine roaring to life under her skilled hands. The lunar shell's dilemma. Cinder's hands trembled as she sat across from Dr. Erland in the dimly lit research lab, the constant hum of machinery serving as a somber backdrop to her newfound reality. So, I'm lunar? She whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. Dr. Erland nodded gravely, his eyes reflecting a mixture of compassion and urgency. Yes, Cinder. And not just any lunar. Your immunity to Letimosis is due to the fact that you are what they call a shell. It's a rare condition among our people, rendering you invisible to Queen Levana's bioelectric manipulation. Cinder's mind reeled as she processed this revelation. She was a shell, a being feared and shunned on the moon. But how? How am I immune? Your adoptive father, Lin Garin, installed a unique device in your neck, Dr. Erland explained, indicating a faint scar just below her ear. It's a bioelectrical security system, protecting you from Levana's control and, at the same time, preventing you from using any lunar abilities. Cinder's fingers instinctively reached for the scar, her thoughts chaotic. So I can't be controlled, nor can I control others. Exactly, Dr. Erland confirmed. This is why you pose such a threat to Queen Levana's power. Your existence challenges her rule. The weight of Cinder's true identity crashed down on her. She was not just a cyborg, but a lunar shell marked for elimination by the ruthless queen. What about my sister, Peony? Is it too late for her to receive the antidote? Dr. Erland's expression turned sorrowful. I'm afraid so, Cinder. But you have the power to change things. You can stand against Lavanna. Cinder rose to her feet, her eyes steely with determination. Then that's exactly what I'll do. I'll save Kai, stop Lavanna, and do whatever it takes to protect those I care about. As she left the lab, Cinder felt the weight of her newfound identity pressing upon her shoulders. Yet, alongside it came a sense of purpose and resolve. She refused to let fear control her life any longer. She was Princess Celine, and it was time to reclaim her rightful place. With each step, her determination grew stronger, fueling her commitment to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Cinder was no longer hiding, she was ready to fight. The stolen antidote. Cinder's heart raced as she stood in the sterile lab room, the vial of antidote gleaming on the desk before her. The soft hum of machinery filled the silence, a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. Dr. Erland's grave nod was all the confirmation she needed. "It's the only chance we have," he said, and Cinder knew she had to act fast. With the vial secured in her pocket, she turned to leave, only to be confronted by Audrey's sudden entrance. "You won't get away with this," Audrey hissed, but Cinder didn't falter. "I have to try," she said, her voice steady. Kai, arriving with his royal guards, caught the tail end of the confrontation. "Cinder," he said, his tone serious, "be careful." With a brief nod to Kai, Cinder slipped past Audrey and out of the lab room. She moved swiftly, the weight of the vial in her pocket a constant reminder of the stakes. The palace corridors, once a labyrinth, now seemed to clear a path for her resolve. She reached the infirmary, where Peony lay still and pale. Cinder approached, the antidote ready, her hope hanging on the edge of a precipice. "Hold on," she whispered to Peony. "I'm here." Moments stretched, filled with silent prayers for a miracle. The ball's revelations. Cinder's heart pounded as she navigated through the throngs of elegantly dressed guests, her eyes scanning for a glimpse of Prince Kai. The grandeur of the palace ballroom, with its crystal chandeliers and sweeping staircases, felt suffocating to her. She tugged at the hem of her silk dress, a makeshift outfit that seemed to scream impostor amidst the sea of nobility. As she edged closer to the dance floor, her gaze locked onto Kai, who was now free from Queen Lavanna's clutches. She needed to warn him, to tell him everything she knew about Lavanna's plans. But before she could take another step, her stepsister Pearl appeared, her fingers lightly brushing against Kai's arm. "Pearl, don't," Cinder whispered, but it was too late. "Your Highness," Pearl said, her voice dripping with feigned concern, "I believe there's something you should know about Cinder." Kai turned, his eyes widening in shock as Pearl continued. "She's not like us. She's a..." Cinder's breath hitched. She couldn't let Pearl finish that sentence. Not here, not in front of Kai. "Excuse me," a servant interrupted, approaching Cinder with a scanner. "May I see your ID, miss? We need to confirm you're on the guest list." Cinder recoiled, her hand instinctively pulling away. "Why? I'm just here to..." "It's protocol," the servant insisted, his eyes narrowing. From the corner of her eye, Cinder saw Kai's expression change from curiosity to concern. He stepped forward, placing himself between Cinder and the servant. "She's with me," Kai said firmly. "No need for ID." The servant bowed and retreated, but the whispers had started, and Cinder could feel the weight of every stare. "Cinder, what's going on?" Kai asked, his voice low and urgent. She met his gaze, her determination clear. "Kai, you can't let Lavanna win." Kai's jaw clenched. "I know, I won't. But why are you here, dressed like this?" Cinder took a deep breath. "I'm here to warn you, Kai. There's more at stake than you realize." Before she could say more, the ballroom erupted into chaos. Queen Lavanna had announced her intent to marry Kai, and the guests were in an uproar. Kai grabbed Cinder's hand, pulling her away from the crowd. "We need to talk, now." They found solace in a secluded alcove, the noise of the ballroom, a distant echo. "Cinder, why hide who you are? Why now?" Kai asked earnestly. "Because the truth has its time, and it's not now," Cinder replied, her voice steady. Kai leaned in, his resolve clear. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Cinder nodded, feeling a surge of hope. "Thank you, Kai. That means everything." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, an unspoken promise was forged between them. They would stand together, come what may. As the commotion continued, Kai and Cinder remained in their quiet corner, the world around them a blur. "We'll find the right moment to act," Kai said, his voice a steady anchor amidst the storm. "For now, let's just survive this night." Cinder nodded, her resolve hardening. Together they returned to the ballroom, their faces masks of calm as they prepared for the challenges ahead. The princess's escape. Cinder's heart raced as she lingered in the palace's shadow, the purloined ID chip tight in her grasp. Time was of the essence. The shroud of night would soon lift, exposing her flight. Inhaling sharply, she emerged into the glow, her cybernetic limbs propelling her swiftly toward the city's boundary. "Where do you think you're going?" The biting tone of Adryari's inquiry cut through the obscurity, yet Cinder forged ahead undeterred. She could not falter, not with liberation within reach. "I'm departing, Adri. It's imperative I unearth my true essence," Cinder retorted, her back to the woman who fell short of maternal affection. "You're erring, Cinder. Acceptance will elude you," Adri cautioned, her words dissipating in the breeze as Cinder's determination held steadfast. The industrial sector cast its foreboding silhouette, its structures standing guard in silence. Cinder navigated her way into one, designated for those afflicted by the plague. Weaving through the rows of beds, her search ceased upon finding Peony, her sister, a visage of pallor and tranquility. "Peony, I vow to rectify this," Cinder murmured, her voice laden with resolve. She administered the pilfered cure, hoping time had not betrayed her efforts. In the midst of her endeavor, Dr. Erland approached. "Your actions are fraught with peril, yet they are necessary. You're not merely endeavoring to save your sister, are you?" Dr. Erland's gaze was piercing, seeking the truth that lay beyond Cinder's actions. Cinder met his stare, her resolve unwavering. "Indeed, it transcends her. It's about thwarting Lavanna and safeguarding all of us." Her voice was a whisper, yet it carried the strength of her convictions. Dr. Erland offered a solemn nod, his understanding implicit. "Proceed then, Cinder. Uncover the veracity and return as the beacon of hope we so desperately require." Casting a lingering look at Peony, Cinder vacated the warehouse, her determination as steadfast as ever. She wove through the shadowed alleys, the purloined antidote her solitary ally, until the city's edge was within reach. Beneath a concealed tarp lay her salvation, a vehicle she had meticulously restored. It was a relic of a bygone era, yet for Cinder, it was the vessel of her aspirations. She settled into the pilot's seat, her digits intuitively navigating the dashboard. The engine's roar was a symphony of promise, and with an assertive thrust of the accelerator, she embarked, leaving her past in the wake. As the metropolis receded, Cinder indulged in visions of the serene garden from her recollections, a haven of serenity and potential. The path ahead bristled with hazards, but Cinder embraced her newfound liberty. At long last, she was free to reclaim her history, to sculpt her destiny.